Here's the answer to this little riddle, this little game on here, this tag game, two truths and one lie coming from my end. All I have to say is that there's probably no ultimate truth out there, because it's all a matter of perception. But in terms of this simple little riddle here, I would like to dispel some notions, because probably everything I said contains a little bit of truth, but one was a big lie. And so the episode number 3, the conversation that took place between this nuclear scientist and myself, who had worked on the Manhattan Project, is actually true. This conversation did happen. The scientist in question is Dr. Herbert York. You can look him up on Wiki. Like I said, I'm not sure whether he's still alive or not, but he was interim director of the Los Alamos laboratory. This whole scientific venture, he worked very closely with Teller and Oppenheimer in developing the entire Manhattan Project, and I did meet with him in his home in La Jolla, California, when I was a student in San Diego. As far as the vetting process was concerned, getting State Department approval, that had to come from his side, not from mine. Since I was just a student, I, especially an art student, probably didn't seem too much of a threat, and so the whole project was approved without any further ado. The conversations we had in his living room, overlooking this beautiful ocean, the Pacific Ocean, from his home, was quite different, because it was not a happy conversation, and it was subdued and reflective. And as I said, people are not what they seem. I realized that this guy had ultimately rejected the achievements of his own prior career as a scientist, as a nuclear scientist, which is why he became involved in arms control negotiations later on. He served as the interim Secretary of Defense right after McNamara went out the door. This lasted about 4 weeks, and he was instrumental in negotiating the SALT treaties, the nuclear treaties between Russia and the United States. So he had peace in mind. His peace was on his mind very much, although he had been instrumental in destroying people's lives, essentially, through his participation in physics. So that was one lesson I learned. The next lesson was participating in the art world. And this story was also true. I did exhibit my stuff in several venues, museums, traveling shows in major museums throughout several states. It wasn't any big deal, not written up in art news, art magazines or anything. And I wasn't really too ambitious about it, because I quickly recognized that people would simply fund these projects to fund their own projects in return. And So I kind of lost faith in that whole effort, this sort of going against the grain effort, when it really wasn't going against the grain at all. It was basically all in conjunction with very wealthy donors who had very other projects in mind, but at the same time proclaiming that they wanted to bring about change in society, when really they didn't even understand my own projects. So I'm no longer making art because of that. Perhaps I'll get back to it sometime in a more let's say in a less pressured world to do this. Now, episode number one did contain quite a bit of truth. My family and I actually did cross the border into East Berlin many times, and my mother was a very assertive person, and she did diffuse quite many situations on the border as we were crossing, because she was nothing less than outspoken most of the time. But the little detail that I was telling you about in terms of the East German border guard pointing a gun at her head, that actually never happened. No one pointed a gun at her head. My mother diffused that situation before it even came about. So, good night. And that's the solution to this little riddle. So, just remember that stories contain a lot of truth, some embellishment, and it is a matter of perspective on how you see things in your own lifetime. There probably is no absolute truth at all. Who knows? Good night.